West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
The Second Amendment is absolute and it's here to stay. A recent report states that Americans own 46% of the world's guns. I think we need to get our numbers up, boys and girls.
Some sick you know what. Hi again, everybody. It's 5 o'clock in New York. We show you that sick statement because that, ladies and gentlemen, is today's Republican Party in these United States of America. That specifically is who has been elevated within Kevin McCarthy's GOP as it now holds the majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. That was Congresswoman Lauren Boebert who made those appalling comments on the House floor hours after a heated debate took place among members of the House Natural Resources Committee. It's a committee she serves on. In the committee's first meeting of the year, Democrat Jared Huffman of California proposed an amendment that would prohibit lawmakers from carrying guns in its hearing room. He noted that the Republican-controlled Rules Committee removed the provision Democrats had put in place for the previous 2 years that banned firearms in hearing rooms and committees. Lauren Boebert called the amendment a political stunt while reiterating her desire to have a loaded gun on her in the Capitol. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez told Axios this, quote, "It's all extremely concerning. I sit on that committee with a man who threatened to kill me," she said, referring to a video posted by Representative Paul Gosar, who denied it was meant as a threat. Their reassurances that they don't want to hurt members, frankly, are, I think, quite empty. They have stoked an environment that is unsafe, she said. The amendment failed in a party line vote. Meanwhile, the State of the Union is less than 1 week away, and Congressman Huffman, along with 13 other Democrats, sent a letter to House and Senate leaders expressing urgent concern about the safety and security of those in attendance. They write this, quote, "The GOP House majority's new rules have made the safety and security of the House chamber, the very seat of American democracy, at risk to infiltration and violence, with reckless changes to necessary preventive measures." The letter cites many incidents as reasons for their concern. Quote, "In the wake of the violent insurrection of January 6th, an attempt by a member of Congress to bring a concealed weapon on the House floor, other members vowing to do so in contravention of House rules, and most recently a colleague distributing what appeared to be legitimate and later revealed to be inert hand grenades on the House floor. We know from experience that the House is vulnerable to multiple fronts of attacks, both from inside and outside Congress. Considering the ability of members of Congress to carry firearms at the Capitol complex outside the House floor, removal of the mags from the entrances to the House floor, and with record threats against the lives of members of Congress, the security of the House complex is today precarious. Safety concerns about the U.S. Capitol with Republicans in control is where we begin the hour with some of our favorite reporters and friends. New York Times congressional reporter Luke Broadwater is here. Also joining us, former CIA director, former Homeland Security advisor to President Barack Obama, and an MSNBC national security analyst, John Brennan, is here. And with us at the table, former top State Department official and MSNBC contributor Rick Stengel's back. Luke, take me inside. I mean, it's amazing that it didn't take this long. I mean, it took a minute for a debate about having loaded firearms inside the hearing rooms to break out. Take me inside this.
Sure, yeah. While D.C. has a law banning any regular person from carrying a gun on the Capitol grounds, there is an exception under Capitol Police regulations for members of Congress. Members of Congress are allowed to take firearms to their offices and keep them there. They are banned from taking them on the House floor, the Senate floor, and from certain specific rooms. But after that, the regulations get quite murky. And so last Congress, Democrats grew concerned once Lauren Boebert joined her committee because she had, boasted about carrying a loaded gun with her. And they passed a regulation that said that you cannot bring guns to the committee room. And this Congress, the Republicans have repealed that. And yesterday they fought back a measure that would reinstate it. So they're essentially saying you're allowed to bring a gun to the committee room. They've also taken a number of other steps. They removed the metal detectors from the House floor, which had caught some people with guns, or at least one person trying to take a gun into the House chamber. And then they also fired the sergeant at arms who had attempted to create a gun-free zone at the Capitol. He wanted all guns off Capitol grounds, whether you were a member of Congress or not. One of Kevin McCarthy's first acts was to fire that sergeant at arms. So you see right away, metal detectors are gone. Regulations about bringing guns in the committee are gone, and also a change in personnel in charge of the security at the Capitol. And yes, next week is the State of the Union where the president will be in that chamber. So Democrats are raising concerns about the security status on Capitol Hill right now.
Luke, I've heard anecdotal evidence that people are on the spectrum between unnerved and scared. What is the climate like?
Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez said we have members in this body who essentially threatened to kill me. Put up a video of me being attacked and killed, and no one's ever apologized to me. And now we have them wanting to bring guns up to the Capitol, or at least take away the regulations that would prevent them from carrying them. And Republicans have fought it back against these changes, saying they need the guns on them when they walk to and from the Capitol, citing fears of crime in D.C. But given the toxic nature on Capitol Hill, you do hear a lot of concern from Democrats. People can get quite angry during some of these debates. Sometimes tempers flare, and there is a concern if the other person is armed, what could possibly happen. Republicans have taken offense to some of these statements, saying, you're basically accusing us of being homicidal maniacs. But given today's toxic political environment, the amount of threats that come in, the violence we have seen on political leaders, and especially after January 6th, there is a heightened state of fear.
And Luke, which party supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021?
That's Donald Trump supporters.
Here's Tim Gosar's brother, Director Brennan, describing, he doesn't use the word homicidal maniac that I think he is, but he does use the words dangerous, unhinged, and reckless to describe Congressman Paul Gosar, who threatened Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
I don't try to choose my words loosely. I believe he's dangerous, unhinged, and is reckless, and is somebody that, and I've said before, needs to not only be censored, but he needs to be expelled. And if at the end of that process, if he gets expelled and criminal charges are warranted, then criminal charges should be brought as well.
So, Director Brennan, that was Paul Gosar's brother, who I had never met before. I have no idea what political party he associates with. But after Paul Gosar sent out a video with an animated cartoon of him killing Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, It was Paul Gosar's own family members who spoke out and tried to warn the country about their brother. And I again, he said he didn't choose his words loosely, so I'll repeat them. Quote, "I believe he is dangerous, unhinged, and reckless." And these are the people who want to have guns in the hearing rooms. What, as a security expert, is wrong with that, Director Brennan?
Just about everything, Nicole. I find it surreal that we're having this conversation.
Right.
I feel that since the Republicans took over the House, we're being brought down the rabbit hole, and we've arrived at the Star Wars bar, and everybody is armed or wants to be armed now. This is just absurd on its face. But it's clear that the Republicans are trying to appeal to the MAGA crowd. And it's not just an embrace of the Second Amendment. I think what they're trying to do is to show their embrace of a gun culture in this country, which I think Representative Boebert mentioned in terms of trying to increase, in fact, the number of individuals who own guns here. But it's sending a signal domestically and internationally, I think, that we're a society that is out of control, that the members of Congress need to be bringing these firearms into the committee hearing rooms, which is, again, very unnecessary. If there needs to be additional security, you should have law enforcement officers and security details increased and enhanced. But to allow these individuals to be able to bear arms in those committee rooms, some others who have spoken, I am concerned that if another crisis like January 6th were to develop, I wonder which side some of these individuals would be on. And I do not trust having them, aside from just the potential for an inadvertent discharge, as more and more people are carrying weapons. But they shouldn't, in fact, have individual members of Congress bringing those weapons, loaded weapons, into committee rooms. Absolutely unnecessary and absurd.
Director Brennan, the last person who wanted to take the mags down because he knew who armed protesters would or wouldn't target was Donald J. Trump. And he said, according to sworn testimony by Cassidy Hutchinson, "Take the bleeping mags down. They're not here to hurt me." A person who wore Kevlar because Trump supporters in the audience he knew to be armed was one of his Republican allies. Republicans seem very much on the same Wi-Fi frequency as armed Republican voters. What is that about? What is it about wanting to be one with your armed supporters that should make all of us nervous?
Well, I think politically, they're trying to continue to bully people and try to intimidate others. And I think they're trying to send a signal that we're going to arm ourselves and we're going to defend our interests as well as our agendas. And if we have to resort to the use of violence and guns, we will do that. And so, again, I just think that, Donald Trump really tried to touch into the pulse of these individuals in that MAGA world who really do embrace a gun culture like the Wild West days of lore. And we are in the 21st century. We shouldn't have in the halls of Congress, in committee rooms, individuals who are armed because what they may be concerned about, which is, I think, a lot of the Republicans who are pushing this, I think those are the ones, as you pointed out, who in fact encouraged and incited some of the activities of January 6th.
It is Friday, the 3rd of February of 2023. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Yeah, you can put that in your hopper. And many people do. So we made it to Friday, and, we got used to, during the Trump years, of the weekends being fraught. And now, I guess, with everything that's coming down now with the new house, that we can be into the throes of being fraught again. Because what will the weekend rot? I don't know. Sometimes it just comes to me and I can't stop it. Maybe I should. Anyway, we should have a full weekend ahead of us. And not Super Bowl, though. Okay? And who knows what's that going to bring? More Jesus commercials. Jeez. I think that's put out by the people that are like part of Hobby Lobby. They're trying to steal our religious artifacts. Do we have them? But that's what they like to do. They're sort of like the rich guy in the Indiana Jones movie. You know, got to get the Grail. We need that wooden chalice. Is it? And because they believe that it was imbued with some sort of mystic, cosmic, well, something to do with power. And they wanted it. And they got it, too, apparently. Yeah. Don't mess around with the Ark. They warned people. They even warned them, don't do it. It's a very volatile and dangerous electrical current that runs through there. Wrap it in whatever conductive material that you have, and who knows what's going to come from out of the sky. Not knowing it, it's actually starting from the ground up. But, hey, perception is everything, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Anyway, where did we go? How did we get there? How did we get here? That is the big question. That's the cosmic question, isn't it? How did we? But anyway, people in the new house have decided, well, certain people, and we know who they are, have decided to supplant the American flag pin that they held so dear over their hearts for so long and condemned anybody else who wore it incorrectly even. They have supplanted their flag pins for some an AR-15. Some I think it's Russian made. I could be wrong. Designed at least, I think, right? AR, maybe not. Anyway, it's their new flag. They have pledged allegiance to the gun, which stands in my hand, or I don't know. I made up some sort of little ditty, but it escapes me now because ultimately it's not that important. Because guns are only for intimidation, right? Do we allow them to intimidate us? Part of not being intimidated is trying not to react in a violent way against it, because you know what happens? They go off. And they're very indiscriminate in the way that they handle it. That's why they have a particular weapon of choice, and that's their choice of weapon. Because you don't need to be a good shot with one of those. Nope. That's why it was developed. Okay? Everybody thinks they're Audie Murphy, right? And nobody is. So fill the area with lead, as the old saying goes. And you'll pick up the pieces later, and there are quite a few pieces left, maybe. But there's a lot to pick up. If you want to be grotesque about it, but why not? They don't care. So now they want to bring actual loaded weapons into committee rooms. And we have a State of the Union coming up, and the same people that took part in a violent insurrection to overthrow not only the peaceful transition of power, but even representative democracy itself, are insisting that they fill the chamber, loaded to the hilt, while the President of the United States, who they do not believe is there legally, because in their fetid minds, Italian satellites somehow flipped the election. And they got proof because people are talking about it. Of course, a lot of people were talking about how Trump is a mobbed up con man. He got kicked out of the Sharper Image because of his steaks. And a whole lot more, too. Because you know how that guy works. All I'm saying is that, getting kicked out of the Sharper Image, it's not necessarily an easy proposition. I'm just saying. Gloss it up, you're in. But not with Trump, because I think that there was too much in terms of liability carrying any kind of Trump product, and they realized right away, we're out of here. Tried to warn people, No, you're just a bunch of, extremists. You're alarmists. He's successful. No, he's not. Warned everybody about the civil rights violations they paid for. Now that's looked at as a badge of honor. We stuck it to the man. Yeah, did you ever? Because we got a full-blown movement on our hands because for some reason a spoiled rich boy who frittered away the largesse of his fortune handed down to him and in some ways wrested away from the other heirs, frittered all that away, that he then frittered away all goodwill from the Italian New York mob that he's took up with the Russian New York mob and beyond. To the point where the head guy of the counterintelligence unit in the Manhattan office of the FBI, the Hillary-hating New York office, wonder why. That guy is in cahoots with Putin and the rest of that cabal. Okay. Everything Donald Trump touches, gets spoiled, is rotten. And that ought to be part of the MO. Where is Columbo when we need him? Just one more question, please. Only in the movies. Or, I don't know, syndicated TV. What do we have in store for you here in the Bistro Cafe as we begin this fabulous Blue Moon Spirits Fridays? Oh, dare I mention that the French 77s are virtually mixed and poured for your virtual imbibing pleasure? Please do. And it's virtual, so you don't need to worry about, maybe if you're on the wagon, we'll make them without the potent spirit part. Anyway, they're all ready for you as we begin here on this fabulous Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Ohio officials are investigating a pro-Nazi homeschool network. Frustrated Texans endure another winter storm with no power or heat. Well, if Greg Abbott and others had spent more time fixing their grid, which they don't really care about because they're making money hand over fist every time it goes down anyway, and they stick any kind of immediate repair bills on the ratepayers. It's like a closed circuit, isn't it? Put the supply of water up top, let it gravitate down, but then you got to get it back up there, and sometimes what happens. Anyway, if he spent more time fixing his grid and less time and money, apparently lots and lots and lots of money, to kidnap asylum seekers and deposit them in the winter cold with no coats or shoes in front of the vice president's residence in D.C. Oh, isn't that funny? And people are freezing to death in Texas, but it's okay. At least they get to stick it to the asylum seekers. Oh, and as we finish up in the Bistro Cafe, Washington State's low-income tax credit is available for the first time. Since 2008, they've been trying to get this implemented and, working. And it looks like finally. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Austria expelled 4 Russian diplomats based in Vienna. Wow, this is like one of these 1970 Cold War movies. I love those. And a Brazilian senator claimed Bolsonaro plotted the coup to block the Lula presidency. We all told everybody so. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by the Kelly Lincoln, and she is quite busy, so thank you, Kelly, for everything that you do. If you would look across the page to the left from that chat room link I just mentioned, you'll notice the link to our Patreon page, and if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio in these perilous times, it really does help us pay our bills. And I'll just tell you, if you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, if you're not already, okay? But those of you who might consider doing so, if you could do that once a month, all kidding aside, it really does help us pay our bills. And this time of year, you know, it's cheaper to pay it in the yearly way, but it's it can be a little dent in the pocketbook there. So we thank you for helping us blunt that dent. Anyway, thank you for your generosity. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter and Mastodon, you can do so on Twitter at Netroots Radio, and you can do so on Mastodon, MSTDN plus, at Netroots Radio. Wow. Tom takes care of those, and thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter. I'll get on Mastodon. I'm looking at Spoutable, too, okay? Because I kind of like what Boozy is doing. Boozy? I kind of like what he had been planning to do, and it looks, what I've been able to see of it, is quite lovely, and it might be fun. Anyway, you can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. The most important reason why is wherever I'm at, you can get access to the show notes and links diaries, and I post that diary daily 10 minutes before showtime, and of course that's where all of this reportage comes from. Not from the diary, but you can find it through the diary, and you can it's always better to go to the source, please. This is somewhat of an aggregate, but I would say it's an angriette. That's what we like to do. Anyway, follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and you can get those show notes and links and other tidbits of info and entertainment. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts. That's the most important thing. Please do pick those up by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found, mixed in with all the rest of us. There's lots more of us than those fine ones. Take a deep breath. It's Friday. Okay, steel my nerves. This first offering here, talking about steel my nerves. Perilous times. Well, it really does astound me how we let them keep getting away with it. Keep using our, goodwill as a representative democracy to really rot us from within. Is that an opinion? I don't know. I think it's turning out to be fact. We told you so. Anyway, this first offering is out of the Washington Post by Laura Meckler. Ohio's Education Department said it would investigate the apparent use. I don't think it's so apparent. I've looked into it myself. The apparent use of fascist materials by a homeschooling network after reports that the pro-Nazi group is run by a couple living in the state. the course materials, denigrate the intelligence of African Americans, and celebrate Adolf Hitler. I think they're going to be teaching at the new college in Florida. DeSantis is recruiting this network right now. You can count on it. Well, in this reporter's opinion. Back to the article at hand. An official with the state's education agency said the department is aware of the reports and is actively reviewing compliance with statutory and regulatory requirements. Do they need those in homeschooling? But there's likely little the state can do. I just kept reading and the answer is there. Back to the article. There's likely little the state can do because while the state mandates that certain topics be taught, it does not govern details of what homeschools can and cannot include. Last week, the Anonymous Comrades Collective, a group of anti-fascism researchers, reported that an organization called Dissident Homeschool was distributing pro-Nazi curriculum via a Telegram channel that has more than 2,300 subscribers. That's a lot of goose-steppers in one spot. The group's leaders call themselves Mr. and Mrs. Saxon. But the Anonymous Comrades research team identify them as Katja and Logan Lawrence of Upper Sandusky, Ohio. HuffPost confirmed their identities in a subsequent report, and they could not be reached for comment because are they ever? The messages and lessons distributed by the homeschooling network are filled with Nazi, white supremacist, and racist lessons, according to excerpts posted by the Anonymous Comrades Collective. When the network reached its 1,000th subscriber, leaders celebrated with a photo of boys delivering a Nazi salute. Sieg Heil. Mrs. Saxon wrote, "It fills my heart with joy to know there is such a strong base of homeschoolers and homeschool-interested National Socialists. Hail victory!" She told a podcast called Achtung Americana, well, that sounds like a bore, that she started the network because she was having trouble finding Nazi-approved school material for my homeschool children. She also said, "We are so deeply invested in making sure that the child becomes a wonderful Nazi." Well, I wonder why she couldn't find any material. One lesson distributed by the network teaches children that black people have lower IQs than white people do. Well, there's no indoctrination in any of this. That's why she's going to be teaching. She and Logan will be teaching at the new college in Florida. You just know it. The lessons venerate Confederate General Robert E. Lee, of course, and denigrate Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., of course. Mrs. Saxon also talks of celebrating Adolf Hitler's birthday with favorite German foods, bragging about making a swastika apple pie. In a lesson reported by HuffPost, children are taught handwriting by copying a quotation about the behavior of the blacks that begins, quote, "A leopard does not change his spots just because you bring him in from the jungle and try to housebreak him and turn him into a pet," end quote. Wow. Do that in old German cursive. Nazis murdered 6 million Jews during the Holocaust. Now, the reporter has to put this in because apparently the knowledge about what happened, mere 20 years, not even that, before we were born, is too long a time in history for people to know about, so they have to be reminded if they don't already know, and a lot of them don't even know. Anyway, as we know, the Nazis murdered 6 million Jews during the Holocaust, plus. In recent years, the United States and other countries have seen a rise in anti-Semitism. Really. In Ohio, parents who want to homeschool their children must notify the local school district and provide 900 hours of instruction per year on a range of subjects, including language, reading, geography, math, and science, and they must also provide an assessment of student work. In a statement, Stephanie K. Siddons, Ohio's interim superintendent of public instruction, condemned the Nazi homeschoolers but said nothing about how they might be stopped because I don't think they can. And I wonder how that happened. I am outraged and saddened, she said. Well, yeah, you ought to be. I'd put a little bit more outrage in there and less a little bit about the saddened, because what do you expect? But that's just me. Anyway, back to the article. She said there is absolutely no place for hate-filled, divisive, and hurtful instruction in Ohio schools. That's why they put it in the homeschooling network. But hey. And the superintendent says, including our state's homeschooling community, I emphatically and categorically denounce the racist, anti-Semitic, and fascist ideology and materials being circulated as reported in recent media stories. The superintendent of the Upper Sandusky Exempted Village Schools, Eric Landerveschicht, also responded to the reporting with a letter to the community. He said he could not discuss specific students and said there was nothing he could do to stop this teaching. Wink, wink. He also said the district vigorously enforces a ban on discrimination in official programs and activities, and he offered counseling support for students who need it. The allegations are egregious, and the district vehemently condemns any such resources, he wrote. And Ken Miller of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Thousands of frustrated Texans shivered in homes without power for a second day Thursday, most of them around booming Austin, and fading hopes of a quick fix stirred grim memories of a deadly 2021 blackout after an icy winter storm across the southern U.S. The freeze has been blamed for at least 10 traffic deaths on slick roads this week in Texas, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. And even as Texas finally began thawing yesterday, Thursday, a new Arctic front from Canada was headed toward the northern U.S. and threatening New England with the potentially coldest weather in decades. Wind chills could dive below minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit. In Austin, city officials compared the damage from fallen trees and iced-over power lines to tornadoes as they came under mounting criticism for slow repairs and shifting timelines to restore power. Across Texas, more than 280,000 customers were without power last night, down from 430,000 earlier in the day. The failures were most widespread in Austin, where impatience was rising among 150,000 customers nearly 2 days after the electricity first went out, which for many also means no heat. Power failures have affected about 30% of customers in a city of nearly 500,000. By last night, Austin officials backtracked on earlier estimates that the power would be fully restored by tonight, saying the extent of the damage was worse than originally calculated and that they could no longer predict when all the lights may come back on. bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Up to $1,200 is now available for thousands of low-income working Washington residents, thanks to a 2008 law that has finally been funded. The Working Families Tax Credit is available for individuals and people with children who meet certain eligibility and requirements. The money is intended to provide a modest cash boost to Washington workers near the bottom of the economic ladder who pay a far greater portion of their income in state taxes than the wealthy do. Nearly 400,000 households are eligible for the tax credit, including nearly 100,000 in King County. Eligible families need to apply to receive it. The state estimates it will pay about $230 million in refunds this year and $257 million next year as more people become aware of it. The tax credit was signed into law by then Governor Christine Gregoire in 2008, but lawmakers facing a budget deficit said they'd figure out the funding later. In 2021, flush with money from the federal government's emergency COVID-19 packages, state legislators approved funding for the tax credits, saying the popularity of the pandemic-related payments to individuals emphasized the value of cash assistance. Indeed. All right, let us get to our break. I know what the MAGAs are going to say about that. They already are. Anyway, let us get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, When Mom Goes Missing. The new film Missing starts with a pretty straightforward grab. A teenager's mom apparently goes missing after taking off on vacation to the always suspect Colombia with her new boyfriend. Using every app and database she can somehow access, 18-year-old June, played by Euphoria's Storm Reed, learns that her mother, played by Nia Long, may not be who June thinks she is. With more twists and turns than a snake with an itch, Missing is on its surface an entertaining thriller, one of an emerging category called screen life thrillers, which look at how our lives are becoming dominated by being online and on call 24/7, and how common and easy it is for tech-savvy people to curate online personas that have little or nothing to do with their real selves. Directed by Nicholas D. Johnson and Will Merrick, who gave us the very similar and successful Searching back in 2018, Missing clocks in at just under 2 hours, and thanks to some tight editing, never drags. Much like Searching, it's recorded almost as a series of screenshots, a technique which brought the budget on that movie down to less than animated levels. More went into the real-life action shots, talent, and overall production this time for a more Cineplex-friendly, if a little less raw, underground feel, but one that also falls short on the character development derived from the online sleuthing we saw in the first, where we really learned about absent characters. This one seems to trade that for really, really contorted plot twists, which will keep you riveted until the final one that sort of hits the rails of believability. The screen life thriller probably isn't a long-lived genre as time and tech move forward, but for right now, Missing's a hell of a ride. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work. Sorry, I'm late. Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi.
Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Arthritis is common among veterans. Traumatic and overuse injuries during active duty are risk factors for developing arthritis. Fortunately, there are low-cost or no-cost strategies that can help veterans manage arthritis. Physical activity can reduce pain and improve function. It can also help improve mood and play a role in managing other chronic conditions, such as heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. You can do low-impact activities, such as walking, biking, swimming, and water aerobics, all good forms of exercise. Arthritis-specific classes can help you get started. Information on classes, exercise programs, and tools are available at cdc.gov/arthritis. These resources can help reduce pain and improve function. Learning self-management techniques can help all veterans become more active, improve their overall quality of life, and thrive.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Are the exceptions set forth in state abortion bans actually exceptions? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. The Supreme Court in Dobbs robbed women of the right to make their own reproductive choices, and instead empowered disproportionately male-dominated legislatures to make those decisions for women. Although many state laws that ban abortions have no exceptions for rape, or for incest, or for fatal birth defects, about half the states that generally ban abortion do have an exception or two in their laws. But the exceptions are so narrow and have so many preconditions, or put a medical professional in so much legal jeopardy that the theoretically available abortion is in reality not available at all. Take the rape or incest exception. It's generally available only if the woman or girl reports the sexual assault to law enforcement, but 2/3 of victims don't do that. Or the exception for the life of the mother, or a fatal fetal abnormality, where the doctor has to be certain about the impending death and faces prison himself if he can't prove it. In sum, since Dobbs, state abortion ban laws that have exceptions have been functioning as if they did not have exceptions. And even if the exceptions functioned as advertised, which they don't change the fact that abortion bans are cruel and misogynist and should be unconstitutional, which for the past half-century, they were. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1971. That was a day of tragedy for the workers at the Thiokol Chemical Corporation plant in southeastern Georgia. An explosion killed 27 workers and injured dozens more. Explosive material meant for the Vietnam War had instead detonated in Georgia. In the early 1960s, NASA had contracted with the company to build solid rocket motors for the space program. Thiokol acquired 7,400 acres acres of land at Horse Pen Bluff, an isolated area of land that used to be a plantation. The company built a large 36-building complex. As orders from the space program waned, the company shifted its production to pesticides and munitions. One item they produced was trip flares for use in the Vietnam War. A trip flare is employed by a military operation to secure an area. A flare is connected to a tripwire and ignites if it is triggered. The highly flammable magnesium is a key ingredient to the flares. A fire started in one of the buildings of the plant. The employees were able to evacuate quickly, but they did not leave the area, not realizing the danger of a potential explosion. When the blast came, it could be felt as far as 50 miles away. Some of the victims were hurled 400 feet in the air. An investigation found that explosive materials had been improperly labeled and that the company's fire protection system was woefully inadequate, contributing to the loss of life. After a drawn-out legal battle, victims of the disaster won a federal lawsuit against the company for their negligence. The Vietnam War had taken an unexpected toll on the working people who gave their lives making trip flares for the battlefront. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 34 degrees and we remain under an active wind advisory for the region. Mostly cloudy throughout the day with occasional rain showers. Highs in the upper 40s to low 50s. Winds out of the southwest at 5 to 10 miles with gusts above 50 miles per hour. Rain will bring with it about a quarter inch of rain between today and overnight, which will be overcast and in the mid-30s. Cloudy skies tomorrow with rain showers, highs in the upper 40s, low 50s. Winds will be light and variable, so they say. And we're looking at about a quarter to a half inch of rain on Sunday, with more through the week. We could only hope. Pollen is rated as none outside the window here in the little village of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 40 parts per million. And the daytime UV index is low at level 2. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.07 inches. Visibility is at 9 miles. And relative humidity is at 94%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 53 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 51 degrees and cloudy. Rome is 56 and fair. Kyiv is 32 and cloudy. Kabul is 35 and cloudy. Hong Kong is 64 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 40 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 70 degrees and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees with rain with a small craft advisory on the bay and offshore. And New York is 24 degrees Fahrenheit, partly cloudy and under an active gale watch. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Stephanie Liechtenstein of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Austria's government said that it has ordered 4 Russian diplomats based in Vienna, including 2 at Moscow's mission to UN agencies in the city, to leave the country. The Foreign Ministry said in a brief statement that 2 diplomats at the Russian embassy had engaged in acts incompatible with their diplomatic status, and 2 at the permanent mission at the United Nations in Vienna committed acts incompatible with the headquarters agreement. It did not elaborate. The diplomats were given a week to leave Austria. Western European nations and Russia have expelled each other's diplomats on several occasions since Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine started nearly a year ago. Austria, a European Union member that has a policy of military neutrality, was initially hesitant to take such action, but expelled 4 Russian diplomats in April after pressure from the public and EU partners. An Austrian official with knowledge of the matter said that the diplomats currently being expelled are higher ranking than the ones who were sent back in April and had been involved in technical intelligence gathering to the detriment of Austrian national security. Vienna is home to UN agencies, including International Atomic Energy Agency and the UN Office on Drugs and Crime. The Russian ministry said it would respond in kind to the diplomats' expulsion, according to state news agency TASS. Russia's ambassador to Austria, Dmitry Lubyabinsky, said in televised remarks that he and the ambassador, Mikhail Ulyanov, ambassador to international organizations in Vienna, separately visited the Austrian Foreign Ministry late on Wednesday to hear about the decision. Lubyabinsky added that Austrian authorities failed to make specific accusations beyond unfounded claims and vague references to the opinion of special services. He said the decision would affect Austria's position as a neutral international platform for negotiations.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Eleanor Hughes and Mauricio Savarese of the Associated Press bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. A Brazilian magazine released audio of a senator claiming then-President Bolsonaro sought help in a plot to annul the October elections and keep himself in power. In the recording, Senator Marcos Doval tells the magazine Veja that the idea was discussed when he met with Bolsonaro and lawmaker Daniel Silveira on December 9th at the presidential residence, 3 weeks before Da Silva Lula was set to take office. Doval, who was an ally during Bolsonaro's 4-year term, said the far-right leader gave him the mission of recording Alexandre de Moraes, a Supreme Court justice who also heads Brazil's electoral authority, while trying to get the judge to admit He overstepped his powers under the Constitution. I annul the election. Lula isn't sworn in. I stay in the presidency and arrest Morris because of his comments, Doval quotes Bolsonaro as saying. Veja released the audio in response to denials the senator issued following the magazine's report on Thursday morning about the purported plot, which had not cited him as its source. Doval told reporters about the magazine published its story that the plot had been Silvieri's idea and that the former president had not said a word during the meeting. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night, and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin l'âge tombe, nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.